Welcome to this week's edition of Coach Prep. Coach Don and I are working on Zoom as we get ready to discuss a topic that was suggested to us by Stan, our producer. And the topic comes from Catherine the Great, fairly historical reference, and her statement of, I praise loudly, but I criticize softly. But before we get into that topic, let's talk about patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. We really want you to come on board as a patron, folks. This new year is kicking our butts with some extra expenses. We've gone from dancing around the break-even mark now for quite a while to we're definitely back in the red. So if we can get some people to come on board, the unfortunate reality of the podcast world is that all these different services and things that we need to broadcast and publish and everything else, they don't care about whether we can afford them or not. They keep going up, and we got to keep keeping up with them. So again, if you're in a position where you can help us, please become a patron. We also want you to go to our fastpitchprep.com website and order some Square Cuts training discs. They're $49.95 a dozen. There's a YouTube channel that's got a tutorial video that shows you how the Square Cuts training discs are used. It's something that I think every team, every coach should have in their toolbox. So Don, I love this quote that Stan gave us. I guess it's one of those things that just kind of comes to the core of coaching strategies, things that coaches should be thinking about that will give them a higher likelihood of success and an increased likelihood of having meaningful relationships with their teams. So I love the idea of I praise loudly and I criticize softly.
Tori, that's a really wonderful concept, and it's so opposite to how I grew up.
What's opposite how I coached for a very long time.
It's absolutely completely backwards to anything I experienced when I was a kid. I'm not, complaining about that because I definitely enjoyed everything about my childhood for sure. But, it was rare that we were complimented at all. It was all the criticisms, right? Those were the things you got to get better at. And boy, it was broadcast loud. Yeah. And it was loud and clear to me too, what I needed to do to, make the coaches happy or to excel with my skills. And it worked out just fine. But I think times are definitely changing, and people are studying and watching and documenting, different styles of presenting feedback and information. And that was probably, wise far beyond the years, right, when that was quoted. But, hopefully we can, I guess, share those ideas with coaches of today's kids, and they can experience even more fun and more benefit and, a little softer approach there. I think that's cool.
Well, and one of the things, and again, I know, people that have listened to us for a long time know that the podcasts end up being a chance for me to talk about righting past wrongs or things that I did as a coach that I wish I could do differently. And the thing that for our younger listeners, people that are of our generation, they understand when we talk about this. The coaches that we played for, no matter who it was, we grew up in a world where most of them either had a military background or saw the military style of training back then as a useful style of coaching. When we talk about people who were coaching legends when you and I were younger, like Bear Bryant and Bobby Knight and those kinds of coaches that was the my way or the highway. There was this is how we're going to do things, and if you don't like it, suck it up, buttercup kind of attitude. And so you don't know what you don't know, kind of a thing. So we all came up through the ranks of thinking that that's what great coaching was, and we would look at a coach like Bear Bryant, who, if anybody wants to look into the dark days of old time coaching, there's a documentary or a movie called The Junction Boys, which talks about Bear Bryant's early coaching career, where he went to camp with 150 players and left with 20 because 130 of them snuck out overnight and headed for the hills because they couldn't handle it. And so we came up through the ranks of coaches and parents that were used to the scream loudly, criticize loudly. The idea was that we were going to get tougher and we were going to be more prepared for battle. And I think somewhere along the lines, what we figured out is that while that's what we were used to, we're not really preparing kids for battle the way we used to think about it. It's not always a kill or be killed. Only one side gets to feel good about themselves world anymore. And we're much more in a world now where we want both sides to feel good. One side gets to feel a little bit better because they won, But the other side still needs to feel pretty good because even though they lost, because if we don't do that with video games and social media and phones and iPads and everything else, these kids are going to go do something that's a lot easier, a lot less stressful, and in their eyes, maybe even more fun if we don't kind of keep in mind what their options are. I don't know about you, but my options were sports or work.
Right.
That was it. There was nothing else. And my dad had a gas station that I worked at in the summer when I was 10 years old, pumping gas because that was the family business. And then back then we didn't have travel ball or anything like that. So there was nothing for me to do but get up in the morning when he went to the station, sit behind the counter, run out and pump people's gas when they pulled in. And everybody thought it was so cute that a little, 10-year-old kid was out there, working at the family business. I got a couple of, quarter tips and things like that. And back then, that quarter was like winning the lottery. But nowadays, kids got a lot of choices besides sports. And so if we're not
Right.
going to make sports and make softball enjoyable and keep it in perspective, I think we're going to be in for a long haul.
No, I think that's wise advice there, Tori, because I see that definitely all the time where kids that don't have a good experience, they are very short in their softball venture. And to have those good experiences is, I think, healthy in a lot of different ways. And that doesn't mean to make it okay to lose or anything like that, but to let losing be a learning experience rather than a
Punishable.
some kind of punishment. Yeah, definitely. No, I like that.
When we talk about praise loudly, I think that's important. The criticize softly, I think, is also important. You still need to be able to be critical. You still need to be able to point out mistakes. You still need to be able to work to correct shortcomings. Those kinds of things are all part of the equation. So it's not like we're letting the kids run the team and we don't ever get to say anything. If they do something wrong, we get to point that out. We get to try to correct it. We get to try to coach them out of it. But we got to keep this whole thing, I think, into a little bit of a different perspective. And again, coaches who are out there screaming and yelling at kids in between innings, or when they make a mistake on the field, or basically calling them out. I think we have to always think about what's the motivation behind that. And again, this is an old coach admitting past mistakes. I think there were times when we would mess something up on the field that I felt like it insulated me if I could project the mistake to the players instead of having to take any credit for it. So if somebody made a gigantic mistake, I could yell something like, "What's wrong with you? We just worked on that," which wasn't
That covers you, right?
covers me, makes it look like it's not my fault that she screwed up. We just worked on that. Well, that might be true, but wouldn't it be a whole lot better if after that inning was over, in a much calmer, much more serene setting, you pull that person aside, you sit next to them in the dugout and say, we just worked on that, but let's make sure we're on the same page so that you can, have a better understanding and make sure we don't make the same mistake again. And so you still have that opportunity to correct and to offer criticism, but let's just make sure that we're doing it in a way that, as we said earlier, encourages kids to continue to want to listen to what you're saying. I've had years where I know players would, they would try to understand what I meant, but try to block out how I was saying it. They knew that the information was good. They just had to sort out all the theatrics and histrionics of it to get to the message. And it took me a long time to figure out that when I yelled, "Hey, we just worked on that," didn't really deflect it for me. It just means we didn't work on it well enough, or we didn't work on it long enough, or we didn't work on it thoroughly enough to make sure that all the players understood it. So again, I think it's comes back to our attitude as coaches and making sure that we're thinking about how to correct with encouragement, how to help players improve without beating them up too much, and without taking the fun out of the game, or making coming to practices or coming to games something that they're going to not look forward to doing.
No, I think all that's great advice, Tori, and it would be fun to get to go back and do it all again, wouldn't it? I know I would do better for sure.
Well, I know I would definitely be a different coach. Now, whether that means my teams would win more or less, I don't know. Part of me thinks we probably would win a lot more. And the
You want
times
to
are different too. So the players that we coached 20 years ago, 30 years ago, were also from the full metal jacket drill instructor model because that's how their parents were raised. And, told this story to one of the players I worked with the other day. She's a younger one, how much different her world is than mine. When I was her age, the teachers at my school had permission to hit me if I did something wrong. And if they did hit me because I did something wrong, my parents called wanting to know what I did wrong so they could hit me when I got home. Versus nowadays, if a teacher raises their voice to a student, we probably have issues. So, it's a different time and place, but I think that, we have to keep evolving, and hopefully by sharing some of these stories and talking about this stuff, our coaches in the trenches can avoid some of the mistakes that maybe we made when we were younger and dumber.
Tori, I'm super excited about technology and everything now for everyone, because it doesn't matter whether it's me trying to work on something around the house. I've got a YouTube video I can go to, and it's going to show me the pitfalls so that I don't make as many mistakes on my own. And, when we were younger, before we were coaches, we were very limited to the people that we were exposed to and the concepts or ideas that they had, so we were just kind of winging it and going with what we experienced, right? So now this, with technology and all the things that people have access to, I think that their experience could be elevated greatly. So I'm just excited about the podcast and being able to talk and share and hopefully create a better experience for some others. Yeah.
We learn from trial and error. We're hoping that we can share our errors so that other people don't have to make the same ones over and over again. So But that's going to wrap up this week's edition of Coach Prep. Please make sure you reach out to us with ideas, suggestions, topics you would like us to talk about, or Player of the Week nominations for the Everything Fast Pitch podcast at fastpitchprep@gmail.com or everythingfastpitch@gmail.com. Go to the fastpitchprep.com website, get your Square Cuts training discs there. You can also have access to the YouTube channel and the blog posts. There's over 700 blogs, and there's a couple of hundred videos of drills and things. So there's tons and tons of information for you to take advantage of there. And then also make sure you go to patreon.com/everythingfastpitch. Folks, we need some new patrons. Please come on board and support us so we can keep this thing rolling. So for Coach Don McKinley and our producer, Stan Lewis, this is Coach Tori. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again next week.